All right. Welcome all of you joining early or right on time, folks. Thank you so much for being here. I think we'll probably give it another 30, 60 seconds or so, just to give people an extra chance to join before we dive in with today's content. Matt, do you have any small talk for the next one minute?
I was curious, actually, so as a very, very proud uncle myself, I've got a number of nieces and nephews. I'm trying to figure out what is the go-to Christmas gift for 2025. I wasn't sure if you knew. Is it Furby,
Gosh.
or is it Elmo? Tickle me, Elmo?
Well, I think, yeah, Labubu's would be I think the modern equivalent of that. I do. I've got, yeah, young nieces, one young niece and a bunch of young nephews that we do all different types of just like STEM learning kit stuff. Like there's a bunch of different brands out there that do these as like subscriptions now of little kits for stuff for kids. So we always do like learning focused things versus toys for the sake of toys.
That's a good.
That was top notch, band. All right, good. We got a fun small talk thing out of the way. Thank you again. Now we've got a bigger number of attendees. So thank you all for taking the time to join us. My name is Matt Bader. I am part of our Kasten product team, and I am joined by the primary Matt.
Yes, my name is Primary Matt, not to be confused with other Primary Matt, but yeah, I'm Matt Slaughton, also on the Veeam Kasten product team. Excited to be here with you guys today to share our 8.5 release and some of the cool new features we're including in the product.
Awesome. So we've got a lot to cover, so I will jump right in just to make sure we've got time for Q&A at the end. Please feel free to drop questions in the Q&A as we go along. If we have a chance to answer them in real time, we'll do that, but certainly try and carve out time at the end to address anything that comes in through the chat. All right, so yeah, we typically have one of these larger releases about every 6 months or so, targeting a number of feature enhancements across whether it's usability, support for different workloads, security enhancements. Kubernetes is obviously a fast-moving target, so we ourselves need to adopt that model as well. So we've got this this sort of history of innovation and what I would say is velocity in this space, and just sort of at a high level there, some of the big topics we'll be getting into today. So I'm going to start with a couple that are relevant really to hopefully to the entire install base today, or those of you that are looking at moving to running Kubernetes and looking at backup solutions. File level recovery, obviously a very key feature for other Veeam products like VDP. And this is something that Kasten previously had introduced support through exporting from Kasten to VDP and being able to leverage that form of file level recovery. And what we're introducing now in 8.5, for those of you that are exporting directly from Kasten to object storage to NFS, we are introducing a native API for doing file level recovery, what we call file recovery sessions. And again, this is applicable whether you're looking at container-based applications, so traditional Kubernetes applications, or for those of you that are looking at running VMs on Kubernetes. So you can see on slide here the file system volumes. We support those out of the box. There's a few more restrictions when we're talking about KubeVirt VMs today. So we're typically talking about a block-based volume, but there is certain limitations on the guest file systems that are supported today and on screen now. So that's something we're again really eager for the community to get their hands on this and tell us where this needs to go from here. But covers a lot of key use cases today that have sort of already been, these initial support being heavily driven by end user feedback. So this is an API only capability for this initial release. And we'll take a look at a demo here, so you'll see that sort of end to end in a second. But just at a sort of a high logical level here, so we've got this new file recovery session API type. So if I wanted to, restore obviously just some subset of files without having to bring down an entire PVC or multiple PVCs from my, what could be remote storage, could be bandwidth constrained, they could just be very large volumes. And again, I only care about some subset of data. All I have to do is, create my manifest for my file recovery session. And what this is going to do under the covers is this is going to spin up just a temporary pod within Kasten itself, which is going to create a data mover session to one or more volumes in that remote repository and expose a means of being able to connect to that session. So the initial sort of transport protocol for this is SFTP or SCP. So a fairly ubiquitous standard when it comes to secure communications of moving files around. So being able to do a secure key-based auth, whether that's from a temporary pod you could run within your application namespace. Let's say if I wanted to access a file and overwrite that directly into my live volume, could be one approach, or simply just connecting from outside of the cluster to say, hey, I want to connect from my SFTP client and grab these few files that I care about out of this particular backup. And then of course there's, you'll see in the documentation, there's a few other knobs and dials exposed for administrators as Helm parameters, just to be able to control things like how many, the maximum number of concurrent file recovery sessions you would want to allow. What is the timeout period for one of these sessions if one didn't get cleaned up by an administrator? Basic capabilities like that. Sorry, Matt. Sounds like you had something to add.
All good. Yeah, just want to highlight. I guess the subtitle here is, and you mentioned this, but just to underscore, this is a cloud native or Kubernetes native way to do this. So really useful, obviously, if you are strong into the GitOps or the CI/CD pipeline automation, but also worth mentioning that this approach does not negate the work that we've done previously using VDP. So if you are an existing Veeam customer that has VDP that's maybe moving to OpenShift virtualization or SUSE virtualization, you could continue to use that for file level recovery. This doesn't break it. You're not going to be forced to go this route. It's just another option. And as Matt mentioned too, now that we support file system mode disks as well, really useful if you're not running VMs and you're just running container workloads connected to file system volumes, you can just pull that single file down. So hopefully this is useful for our cloud native customers that have large PVCs or large data sets that don't want to pull those down all at once. This unlocks that for them.
Great call out, Matt. So just to look at a quick demo here. So I've got already an application that I've created a policy for. I've created, we can see here a restore point or a backup of that application. I've got my one, in this case 300 megabyte volume. Probably wouldn't take all that long to download from my remote storage, but we'll pretend for a second maybe that's a 30 terabyte volume, right? That's certainly not unheard of. So if I look now from a console perspective, this is my file recovery API that I mentioned. It's pretty simple structure. So on the left-hand side, I'm just looking to grab the name of the PVC that I want to mount, as well as the name of the restore point, so the backup specifically that we want to reference. And this could be one PVC from the same restore point. This could be multiple PVCs from the same restore point. This could be the same PVC from multiple different restore points even. If I wanted to connect to a session, download a couple of different versions of that file to compare them. And then we see on the very bottom of that is just, this is a public SSH key. So how am I, from a client perspective, going to identify myself to this FRS session? so it knows it can, allow me to securely connect. So that's all that's required in configuring again that manifest. So what we'll do here is we'll go ahead and apply it and see what goes on in the cluster. So this only takes a few seconds to come up and be available here. So I think this was under 10 seconds until that file recovery session pod is ready. Awesome. So now we're able to connect to this. So if first I look at the details or the status now of that API, we'll see here within status, I've got this expanded information under transports, which essentially just tells me, hey, this is the service, the temporary service that we've created to allow you to connect to this temporary pod within the Kasten namespace, on this specific port. So what I'll do in this particular demo is I'll just run a couple of quick commands here to scrape out that service name and port. So I'm just going to start a simple kubectl port forward here to connect to that file recovery service. And that's just going to allow me to connect easily from outside of the cluster to access those files. So you can see here on the right-hand side, I could connect via a command line SFTP client. That's not particularly exciting for a demo. So we'll swap over to a UI-based SFTP client again and connect to that same kubectl port forward, which is why it appears as localhost. And we see now within that session, when I connect to the session, I see the name of my PVC that I've selected, the name of my restore point underneath that. Actually, that now will be the other way around when you do it. It would be the name of the restore point, the name of the PVC. This was from a slightly earlier build. But we see within now that directory structure, you are getting access to, again, being able to browse through the contents of those volumes. I'm going to download whatever I need, and again, could restore those to my live environment with whatever process makes most sense to me. I mean, this is one of those things that, depending on your sort of operational practices, you might want to restore that to the existing workload a number of different ways. That's why having this kind of standards-based approach is nice. And then once we've downloaded those files, now we can just delete that FRS session to clean up after ourselves. Or, as I mentioned before, there is that timeout period that would wind up cleaning up or ending the session for us. So that's really all there is to say about the current state of the file recovery session. So again, really interested for people to give this a try, and again, let us know what more you want to see from that capability.
Well, and at the risk of dangling the carrot, Matt, I know we do have plans to add a UI component for this in the near future, right?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So I certainly, the important thing is getting the capability out there. We didn't want to hold it back simply because there wasn't a UI component to this yet, but that is already planned for a future release. Good point, Matt.
All right, we do have a question. Sorry, I just had a question come in from Mr. Jeff Burke, a familiar name. He's just asking when 8.5 code will ship. It's a good question. Yeah. Matt,
Jeff, we're right now we are finishing up some of these very last features as we're kind of coming right up against the holidays. So it's a question of really at this point doing a lot of testing and a lot of finalization on these. Realistically, if not out by the end of the calendar year due to the holidays, it would be targeted for the first sprint of January. So very, very soon. All right, so on to the next topic. Now that we've already gotten the hard question out of the way, restore point validation. So again, this is another one that I think is applicable to a broad cross section of Kasten users. Why would I care about the ability to validate the contents of my restore points? if I'm exporting to a mutable storage, a mutable object storage, which we certainly recommend, yeah, that might be the case, that if I can't delete something, if I can't modify something, that there's certainly a lot less risk of not being able to restore that data. But in the real world, immutable storage isn't always an option. Whether that's in edge deployments, or I'm making use of existing storage target investments, whatever it happens to be. At the end of the day, a backup is only as good as your ability to restore it. So having a means of being able to validate whether, we can see here, there's sort of the quick approach or the full scan approach. So quick approach is just validating that all of the objects that I'm expecting to be in the repository to restore this particular backup are present. And then that full data scan is just looking at comparing what are the checksums of these objects in that repository against the original checksums that were created when the backup originally took place. So again, before I might start a restore of a bunch of very large volumes, I could use this as a way to sort of sanity check that, again, everything that I expect to be there is there. So not too much else to say about this. This can be launched from the UI, directly from the restore point catalog. And again, another area where curious to get people's thoughts on where else within the product that this could help all of you.
Matt, correct me if I'm wrong. Well, I think you're probably about to get to it right now, but if we wanted to do this programmatically or maybe on a regular frequency, could we do that using something like a
yeah, great question, Matt. So it could be instantiated as a one-off operation through the UI today, but like any Kasten API is a Kubernetes native API. So this is really a validate action API. So it can be defined programmatically if you wanted to use something like Argo workflows to do this on a recurring basis. All right, so this is the big topic that I wanted to spend a decent amount of time on in this presentation, and that's this growing use case of running virtual machines on Kubernetes, through the KubeVirt project. And I wanted to start by talking about some of the differences between protecting a container-based application versus protecting a VM. Actually talk about what are some of the challenges, with protecting VMs in Kubernetes today, and how we feel that we're taking a significant step forward to improving that experience in 8.5. So if you'll indulge me in a bit of a lesson here. So if we look at container-based application protection, what defines a Kubernetes application? Typically, we think of that boundary or that bucket as being the namespace. So I've got my app1 namespace, my app2 namespace. So Kasten policies then protect namespaces primarily. So I could protect one namespace, I could protect multiple namespaces, I could protect a number of namespaces based off something like a label selector. And when I'm then running those backup operations, so my backup actions, my export actions, I'm getting this granularity of one action per namespace. And similarly, I create restore points or backups on a per namespace basis. You see a theme here, I think. And then when I go to restore that restore point, I'm selecting the namespace-based restore point. And obviously there's, I can filter things in or out of that selection, but at the highest level, you are, the unit of selection really is a namespace. So what does that then look like if you apply that experience to KubeVirt VM? So I've got here my department X VMs namespace that I've got 1, 2, 3 virtual machines present. Really, those coming from a virtualization background, you would think of the boundary of an application as typically being a VM, or maybe it's some group of VMs together. But certainly not unheard of to have, one top to bottom stack just in a single VM. So already now we're talking about multiple sort of applications within a single workspace, or within a single namespace rather. And then how we see end users using Kubernetes namespaces to organize those VMs. We've seen a lot of different patterns here already. Some of them have been tied to user access, like how aligning namespaces to different security groups within an organization, or different application teams, or based on different networking levels for security purposes. So we need to, we need an approach that can sort of address all of those different patterns of where I want to put my VMs. And then the individual VMs here, we've got a number of dependencies, right? It's not just that virtual machine manifest, it's the PVCs, the disks that map to that virtual machine. You've got things like instance types and preferences, sort of your templates for KubeVirt VMs, and network attachment definitions, which are really your VM virtual networks that you're assigning to these things. And some of these may exist within that VM namespace. Some of them may exist in other namespaces. Some may be cluster scope resources. So these really span the cluster wide what needs to be selected for any given VM. So the problem then with this namespace-based selection is, now let's say I want to back up just VM1 and VM2 there. I would have to maybe manually identify all of those dependencies and apply labels to them. So I could do maybe a label-based selection, or I would have to manually create include or exclude filters to make sure I'm selecting as part of my policy exactly every single artifact that I would care about for protecting those VMs. That's quite hard when you're talking about having dozens or even hundreds of VMs in a single namespace. The other challenges you run into there is operationally. Now when I run that backup, I've got this pretty large failure domain where if I have one backup action, so snapshotting all of my VMs, and then I only have one export action for all of those VMs, if my export of VM3 fails, that's going to mean that whole action fails for all of those VMs. And that's not very practical. And then the last piece of this is then when I go to restore. So the policy, creating policies to protect VMs, especially if I have sort of granular selection needs, quite difficult today. And then also on the restore side, if I've got 100 VMs in a single namespace for this department, and I have one restore point with all of the artifacts for all of those VMs. Let's say now I want to restore just VM3. Now, again, I've got to sort of filter through all of those artifacts to select just the subset of artifacts that correspond to VM3. So, can you use this approach to protect VMs? Absolutely. Is it fun? Absolutely not. So, what are we doing to change all of this? This is one of the neatest things in 8.5 is this idea of a VM-based selector for policies. So this screenshot you see here over on the right-hand side, for those of you familiar with the Kasten policy form, would be used to only adding namespaces or a label selector for namespaces to a policy. And starting with 8.5, you'll now have this choice of, am I creating a policy for a typical container-based application, or am I creating it for these modern virtualization VMs? And through this path, what we're getting now is a means of saying, okay, I want to specify either all of the VMs in this given namespace, which at that point, if I want to make sure I'm protecting future VMs as they're added to the namespace. Excellent. And that probably covers a lot of scenarios. But then also when I need to say, if I've got a special SLA for some subset of VMs, to be able to just select at a VM level what I want to protect, then we handle all of that resource dependency identification really for you. And the other interesting side effect of this, not side effect, the other interesting sort of design component of this is splitting up these operations then on a per VM basis. So I could have, a single policy that could protect hundreds and hundreds of VMs, even spread across multiple namespaces. But now, when I actually create them, as we'll see here on my next slide, is how we're bringing them all together. So if I look now at going back to my previous diagram of what this now looks like in 8.5, the first thing we're doing when we run those operations is doing this mapping from the virtual machines to automatically identify what are all of these dependent resources on that VM basis. And then we're running the individual actions. So the snapshot phase, the export phase, all of those get executed on a per VM basis. So if VM1 fails, that isn't going to impact, my backups of VM2 and VM3 as a for instance. And the other nice part of this is now I have individual restore points, again, on a per VM basis. So we can see here I've got these individual restore points of just the subset of dependencies that matter for each individual VM. So when I now want to restore just VM1, I would have the same experience that I would today, going to the restore point catalog, selecting just VM1, or oh, hey, I've got a great typo there. That should be VM3. If I want to select VM1 in this namespace, I grab that out of my restore catalog, and I know that restore point has everything that I need to restore that one VM. So just making this more familiar of an experience for those coming from certainly a virtualization background.
And I think this ties in nicely kind of to the single platform approach, right? So to kind of match our friends at Red Hat or SUSE, or and insert Kubernetes distribution with KubeVirt, to your liking, is we're essentially trying to make sure that if we're going to use a common primary platform to host both containerized and VM workloads, we also have a single data protection platform that we can use to protect these two different workloads. And this goes to say too, so maybe you're running Red Hat OpenShift today as a customer running Kasten, but you're onboarding OpenShift virtualization VMs into this cluster that already exists today. Using RBAC, you can essentially give your Virt admins a very familiar experience of targeting Virt-based policies, while still maintaining those capabilities you already have today for containerized applications. So hopefully, to Matt's point, we've made this more fun. Filter policies, the first one's usually fun, the 50th, not so much. So hopefully we've kind of eliminated some of that overhead for you and made VM backup a little more fun for you.
Yeah, this is definitely all about the easy button. So I think the sort of natural, concern that would pop into people's heads then of okay, now I've got individual restore points per VM. If I need to restore 10 of those VMs at the same time, do I need to go through the restore form 10 times for each of those? And the answer, I've spoiled it with the slide, is no. So we've had the ability to do multi-namespace restore operations for a number of years, and we've been able to extend that capability to support these VM-based restore points as well. So now directly from the VM dashboard within the Kasten UI, I could select multiple VMs and indicate, okay, I want to restore selected. And similar to the namespace focused form, we've got the ability here to either automatically, it's going to automatically select the latest restore point for all of the selected VMs by default, or do I want to select the latest within some date range, or do I want to override manually for each of those VMs individually? So you've got similar level of flexibility, I think, compared to those coming from the VBR side of, I need to be able to do this as more of a bulk operation. And then sort of rounding out other enhancements related to modern virtualization. So we saw back on one of my diagram slides earlier, I had a hot plugged SCSI volume for one of my KubeVirt VMs. That's something that works absolutely transparently now. So if I've got hot plug VMs added to any of my virtual machines, the next time I run a backup, that will be picked up automatically. There's no need to actually restart those VMs, mark it as a persistent disk or any of that. You now have the option during the restore phase to retain the original MAC address for those VMs. Matt, I know you had seen this in working in some testing with the migration toolkit for virtualization. So on the OpenShift virtualization side, if you elect to retain the static IP address of the VMs that you are moving over to your Kubernetes cluster, it's important, obviously, that we retain the original MAC, so we can keep that original IP configuration consistent as well. Or again, if I'm using IPAM or DHCP reservations where that might matter, so you can opt in on restore to set that. And then another sort of flexibility piece here, starting with OpenShift 4.19 and later, has been what we've 4.18 and later. For this feature, you can now restore just individual volumes for a VM as well. So let's say I've got a database VM that has extra disks where my actual database files live, and I want to roll back one of those, but I don't want to roll back the entire VM, the entire OS disk. I could just selectively restore those individual PVCs. All right, so I think we're now on to the broader set of just sort of platform-wide capability enhancements that depending on what distribution you use or what infrastructure you use, this will apply to some subset of you. So I'll start with, actually, Matt, do you want to talk about the enhancements for Azure?
Yeah. So for our friends on the line that are using Azure today, or maybe work for Microsoft, some good news on this front, I guess, in terms of added support for Azure capabilities, as well as kind of security-centric focus as well within Kasten. Number one is federated identity support. We now support Azure federated identity. I think previously it was primarily Google, Matt, if I remember correctly. But essentially, this allows us to use, instead of using long-lived keys, you can now use something like Azure Federated Identity to essentially allocate those keys dynamically, and that way you really minimize your security risk there. You're not having to worry about invalidating keys should they leak, or maybe somebody leaves that had the keys. We can kind of button that up tightly.
Short-lived tokens that you don't have to manage rotating yourself is a good thing. Yes.
Yes. More fun. Additionally, Key Vault. So this is another, I guess, key management store that we now support within Kasten for customer managed keys, right? So out of the box, Kasten will have its kind of own keys dedicated within the product. However, if you are using something like HashiCorp Vault, which we already support today, or Key Vault, which we now are introducing support for, you can essentially leverage Azure Key Vault to handle the encryption keys and key rotation for your encrypted backups. So pretty handy there, and another security feather in the cap. I don't think Bryant's on the call, but our security PM, this lets him sleep slightly better at night, I think, having this in the product. And last but not least, we did validate in the last about 3 months ago, but worth mentioning here again, Azure Files CSI. So we've been asking for a long time, our friends at Microsoft, and finally they have delivered. We have a way to now both back up and restore Azure File PDCs via Kasten using their CSI driver. So just here again, more choice, more flexibility within Azure Cloud for your persistent storage. Just makes things, again, hopefully a little bit easier for those use cases.
And just to put a fine point on that, Matt, that is specific to SMB shares provisioned through Azure Files, not NFS shares yet, correct?
That is correct. Yes, good point. Yeah, it is SMB only today. If and when Microsoft introduces the support for NFS via CSI, that will automatically come in as well in terms of as a supported disk. But yes, today it is just was it simple messaging block? That's SMB?
Yeah. Speaking of SMB, so we've always been focused on freedom of choice for what infrastructure I want to run Kasten on, what distributions I want to run, where I want to export my backup data, and we've grown that list just a little bit longer here. So supporting all of the various forms of object storage and NFS storage. We've now added SMB-based storage to that list as well. So if this is, you've got existing investments again in infrastructure that you're using as backup targets that are SMB capable, this is again another option that you would have when exporting from Kasten. The next one,
our
sure.
restore point validation, that will work on SMB location profiles, yes?
Yes, it will. Yes.
Excellent.
All right, and a native vSphere CSI support. So this might sound somewhat confusing to people because obviously we've had integration with the vSphere Cloud Native Storage CSI driver for multiple years at this point. But the way we have traditionally integrated with vSphere or the vSphere CSI rather. Has been through a more direct integration, which allows us to do things like change block tracking from VDK APIs to basically get a more efficient export from vSphere to your Kasten backups. The caveat to that approach being that Kasten needs to be able to talk to vCenter. And in many environments, that's fine. In some environments, such as like a hosted environments, that may not be viable. So now you have an opt-in choice here of using the full CSI volume snapshot path when working with the vSphere CSI. So what this effectively does is just eliminates that requirement to use to require connectivity to vCenter. So I think the people that have been waiting for this know who they are and probably have already been told. And then the last. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
I was just mention too. Yeah, if you weren't waiting for this and you're using vSphere CSI today with Kasten, no changes needed as well. If you don't have a security requirement that keeps Kasten logically separated from vSphere, recommend staying that route just from a performance standpoint.
Yeah, nothing changes with the existing direct integration. If you have an infrastructure profile for vSphere today, you are 100% correct. And then last but certainly not least here is support for remote write from our internal instance of Prometheus. So each Kasten deployment has its own baked in Prometheus instance that we use for storing a number of different metrics that get used for reporting purposes. And this remote write capability just makes it easier to be able to roll up those metrics to a centralized location. So if I wanted to funnel all of these into a centralized Prometheus or Thanos instance, or to some cloud hosted time series database or SIEM, this makes it, able to anything that can ingest those Prometheus remote writes. I can now consolidate all of those Kasten metrics in one place for reporting or dashboard or alerting purposes. So certainly for those of you that are managing many Kubernetes clusters, this is a win for observability. Speaking of observability, I think the last thing on my list for 8.5 was some enhancements to the licensing dashboard, both in a single cluster view as well as the multi-cluster view, just to have a better sense of it, especially those that are using many clusters today, are using Kasten multi-cluster, and leveraging it for license sharing purposes. So you've got easier insight into which clusters are consuming or contributing however many nodes from a Kasten licensing perspective. So again, just another small usability win there.
We want to highlight too, yeah, super useful. It hopefully helps demystify on the far left pane you see here under 400 total nodes, knowing which nodes are claiming a license and which aren't. I think knowing which aren't, I think oftentimes is a bit of a mystery, or it previously was a bit of a mystery. So hopefully this
Yes.
helps make it much clearer.
All right, and then with that, Matt, I'll turn it over to you for the last topic.
Awesome. Yes, AI. No one's talking about it, so we're going to talk about it.
That might be the hottest take in this entire webinar. I don't think you were serious, but
let me introduce you a new concept. So yes, probably those on the call have heard of AI. Most organizations and software companies are talking about AI, and we are no different as Veeam. A lot of kind of good things in the pipe. Some things already delivered, and some things coming in the very near future. For more on that, definitely check out the official Veeam blog and Veeam resources. From a Kasten lens, though, let's dive in a little bit on what this means, in terms of AI. So here, where we're looking, I'll kind of classify this. We typically group things into two buckets. There's AI for Kasten, and then Kasten for AI. We're going to focus today, and with our 8.5 release, Kasten for AI, so protecting these AI workloads. It may not come as a surprise to those on the call, but Kubernetes is a very suitable platform to host artificial intelligence applications and machine learning pipelines. It just lends itself to it from a scheduling perspective, from resource allocation, whether it's GPUs or CPUs or tensor chips, TPUs. So inherently, obviously, we tend to see a lot more Kubernetes as these applications kind of make their way into production. And it also probably doesn't come to a surprise to a lot of folks on the call. A lot of these AI applications have stateful data, right? Whether that's just vector databases, if you're doing RAG with LLM, whether it's model training with checkpoints and the models themselves, oftentimes those live directly on persistent volumes and need to be protected. So as it so happens, Kasten's pretty good at protecting these kind of resources. So out of the box today, Kasten can in large part protect a lot of these AI applications. Essentially, you allude to it here. You mentioned top of the call, or top of the slide rather, Kubernetes, top platform, point LLMs, and inference pipelines. Kasten's a top platform for protecting those resources. So yeah, definitely. I guess. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to throw in one more for instance there as well of as we see agents play a larger and larger role in so many applications that individual organizations are now implementing, using other people's foundational models, not necessarily doing a lot of model training themselves, but building things like MCP servers that provide interfaces to other existing data sources that again, oftentimes they are running on Kubernetes. So it could just be other transactional databases or other analytics databases that are running on Kubernetes. So it may not be the core part of the AI workload, but is still part of that, the key data sources that are feeding those inference deployments.
And
Just
you raised a
another.
good point too, Matt. And I guess I won't spoil the post. And at this point, it is a few months old, but I'm doing a little self promotion. Go to veeamkasten.dev. We have a very good, or in my opinion, because I wrote it, a very good post on Replit and their use of agentic AI and potentially why you might need data protection in your environment if you were using agentic AI. So not even backing up data sources for these agents, but maybe also backing up these resources these agents can act upon. Is very important. So definitely, if you haven't read it yet, have a look at it. I was proud of that one. It was a fun one to write. So to dive in a little bit deeper, as much as kind of the same message that we say typically for organizations looking to move from traditional virtualization or traditional infrastructure to Kubernetes, a lot of these traditional infrastructure backup solutions won't really be or are not well suited to AI workloads, right? So to kind of break this down, traditional backup tools obviously today can't really reliably protect a Kubernetes cluster. That's why products such as Kasten exist. Really, we obviously are cloud native ourselves. We can protect things in a cloud native way, which is really useful. We fit in the picture pretty happily there. And we're also taking into account the fact that a lot of these Kubernetes resources that we're protecting, worth mentioning, are distributed and ephemeral, right? So we can't just snapshot or back up our worker nodes or the VMs that are worker nodes. We can't just back up at CD. We need something like Kasten to actually protect what's in our namespaces or cluster scope resources. And as mentioned before, a lot of these AI ML apps are often running in multi-service pipelines, all spread across different pods and namespaces. So you need to be Kubernetes aware to be able to protect these Kubernetes resources. AI applications, as mentioned before, often have persistent volumes and stateful data. This, again, could be something like a vector database. This could be just PVCs that host your model, or this could be something like relational database, right? Often these AI applications follow polyglot persistence, which I wanted to take the advantage to say that just because it is a fun thing to say, but it is a good use of polyglot persistence. If you look at ChatGPT, that's a great example. ChatGPT uses a RAG, it uses a vector database in the backend, but if you can also store all of your previous queries, those previous queries are actually saved in a relational database. So, it's a good example there of kind of different database forms likely running in Azure, Kubernetes, or AKS. It's important that we have point-in-time consistency among our training data sets or model checkpoints and metadata. So again, going back to kind of being that Kubernetes aware and almost pipeline aware, if you're building your machine learning pipelines in Kubernetes, we don't want to have to go and pull a bunch of different levers and turn a bunch of different knobs to be able to get back to a good state. Ideally, we can just choose a restore point from a nice restore point catalog and get most, if not all, of our resources back to the state they were at that time. So really helpful to have a catalog and a UI to be able to quickly get back there into a restore point. That's mostly it. I think we talked a little bit about why Kubernetes is well suited for AI ML workloads. Did want to dive into a demo here. This is a very simple demo that I built, but hopefully helps illustrate the point. It's my little animal AI knowledge chat. You can see here, it's super simple. It's using a vector database, in this case, Qdrant, as well as a nice Python Flask front end. You can see the pods here we're running. And then it's got, of course, a disk attached that's storing our stateful data. I can interact with this, ask it using natural language, just some very basic questions. This is obviously comprehensive. These are the 4 animals that are wild in the entire world. And I can see that each one has a status of trainability and kind of level of endangerment. Let's take a look and see what animals are domesticated. As we all know, it's only cats and dogs. So those are the 2 that we have here. So, there's stateful data. We want to make sure we're protecting that. Let's go ahead and dive into Kasten and have a look. So create a new policy. We're going to go ahead and make sure we export this off our cluster because otherwise it wouldn't really be a backup. I've sped this demo up a little bit just to save us all a bit of time, but just worth mentioning here, we can basically kick this off. It will go ahead and protect our vector database as well as the AI application, right? So that web front end, all in a nice, friendly, fun, simple restore point. Look at that, super fast. I've got our blueprint here specifically protecting my Qdrant vector database. Here doing very simple kind of lock and unlock. So I lock prior to the Kasten backup, unlock after the backup is done. And this just ensures that if there's any sort of kind of vectors being added, that those aren't missed or corrupted during the backup. Also important though, maybe I haven't coded my application very well. Maybe I have a prompt injection attack vector here where if I say drop the database, that's exactly what my AI application does. Without backup, this would be a bad place, right? I've spent all that time calculating my vectors and putting those in my database. I would have to go back and either recalculate that or dig out somehow, some other way to restore that. Fortunately, I have protected this with Kasten. So what I've done is just gone ahead and chosen a restore point. I'll be able to bring back my application here, and I can list all the animals it's aware of. And back here, I have my RAG back working with my database, with my animals captured there. And I'm going to go patch my code to make sure I can control for that and make sure my database doesn't get dropped by my nice friendly AI application that I've written for my customers.
Thanks for sharing or talking through the demo there, Matt. I think the big takeaway for me related to this is there's not anything specifically tied to 8.5 here, right? It is the recognition that a number of AI workloads being hosted on Kubernetes are not all that different from other container-based stateful applications that we've seen. And that's really, I've always thought of Kasten as a toolbox, right? Of end users, customers define what an application looks like in Kubernetes because it's such an expansible, wow, screwed that up. Expandable platform in terms of being able to develop their own APIs and workload types and integrate different off-the-shelf operators into what comprises their application. So really, again, what you need is a solution that has a very rich set of capabilities to orchestrate whatever actions you need for that backup, for that restore. And again, being hyper sort of Kubernetes aware to enable a lot of that orchestration is the key point here. So this is another one where really interested in talking to more folks that are running AI workloads on Kubernetes today, have had data protection challenges, to see how else we could really serve that growing part of the market as well.
And you set me up perfectly, I guess, for my last point, Matt, which was, and I'm going to throw a dart here at some competitors. I'm not going to name names, but because these resources are often defined as Kubernetes applications, and Kasten obviously has now a good, decent history in protecting these things, we're not having to scramble as an organization or company to suddenly have an AI offer, right? We already have something in market. If your organization is considering implementing or building your own AI application, or even, well, I don't know how many off the shelf there is that you can just completely plug and play. But long story short, we are looking into product enhancements within Kasten. But to Matt's point, this is not 8.5 specific. These are resources we can protect for the most part, pretty much out of the box today. So pretty handy there.
Awesome.
Done throwing my dart.
So I will. I don't see. I don't know if maybe my chat hasn't refreshed, but I don't see additional questions in the Q&A right now. I know we've got a few minutes left, so by all means, if there are other questions out there, please feel free to get those submitted. Otherwise, Matt and I are happy to go back to small talk about Christmas gift ideas, if that would be particularly of use to any of you as well. No, but for real, I appreciate everyone taking the time out of their days to learn more about 8.5. Again, we covered a lot of different topics, things that are specific really to any Kasten deployment in terms of granular file recovery and restore point validation. Obviously, the enhancements to VM-centric operations, which are going to be critical for those, evaluating alternate hypervisor strategies in 2026. And again, that long tail of just continuing to listen to end user feedback of what capabilities you need to best integrate, again, this incredibly expandable platform within your own environments. That's exactly what we're here for. So I don't see anything else new in the or that anyone is typing. So we'll use this as an opportunity to wrap up and give you folks a few minutes back in your day. Otherwise, if you think of things afterwards, you can always find Matt and myself on LinkedIn. And again, happy to dig into your questions and thoughts separately. Matt,
One
any
request.
other closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just thinking next time for intros, Matt, we can introduce myself as Matimus Prime. I think that's going to be my request. But
Okay, all right. So we'll work on updated nicknames for the next What's New webinar as well. All right, great. Thank you all for taking the time. Can't wait to bring you the next version of this. We've got a lot of big things planned for 2026 as well. So really look forward to getting to share these types of updates. Take care, everyone.
awesome. Happy holidays.
That too.